Hello everyone. Today I'm going to give a short presentation about the individual reflection and the contribution and what I've learned of the project. Introducing myself, I'm Akash Deepaset and my student ID is 30369794, and the project we are doing is Tasman salinity and the conductivity applet. And this one is the client is of the Itech, and this one is the reflection presentation. And here are the important stakeholders. And starting from the client, the client is Dirk Hedford. He's the client, and he has given us the project, and we're working under him. And Ansel Kumar Sister, he's the supervisor of our project, whereas Raji Parazuli, he's the team member, and Gaurav Kumar, me myself, and Sarad Malla, we are also working on the project. Raji Parazuli is working mostly on the back end of the project, whereas Gaurav Kumar, he works on the front end, and I'm working on the documentation and testing and write-ups part of the project, and also contributing some parts in the sprints of the project, whereas Salman, he also helps in the documentation, data collection, and other aspects of the project. And this one is the project outline. And in the project in this project we have to make an application that models the variations in the conductivity, depth, and temperature across the Tasman Sea. And we have to generate a chart that shows the conductivity, salinity, and the temperature and the depth of the Tasman Sea. And the objectives of the project is to create a database that models the conductivity, temperature, and depth of the Tasman Sea based on the time and location, and also the creating of the graphical format of the in the 2D and 3D format of the charts. And now starting from the individual reflections and contributions, what I've learned from this individual, and what I've done like from this in this project of Itech 415 is like starting from the user stories. We at the starting of the project we will like then there was a team formation, then like after the team formation and the client selections, then project selections, we had on the user story, we call it, started from the collecting of the user stories. Then we started making the product roadmap, where we made about the where we made the user stories and the product backlogs. And then we started dividing our tasks in the sprints, like sprint 1, sprint 2, and sprint 3. And in sprint 1 we make some of the tasks with some of the user stories, whereas in sprint 2 also some of the other user stories, and the sprint 3 the remaining user stories. And we went and then after that we went to the final presentations of the final presentation of this project. And then at the end of the project, it's the final write-up. And starting from the user stories and product roadmap, at, at the first at the beginning of this project, we started collection of all the user stories. There were around 18 user stories, and then there were some of the user stories were even more, and some of them were like common user stories. So we summed up all the user stories and made around like 18 user stories. And then after the collection of the user stories, then we made a product roadmap based on the user stories, and then also the incoming product backlogs, and then also rank the user stories among the priority basis. Like some of them were like me, so it's very important, and whereas some of them were like less important. So we also rank the user stories based on the we also rank the user stories. And then also the and after the rankings and after the incoming product backlogs, then we also divided the user stories into the sprints. And like a few of the that is the starting of the user stories, like collection of the data, and so like that stories in the sprint 1, whereas the other in the sprint 2 or sprint 3. So we also divided the user stories in the sprint according to their sprints. And then also I write the incoming product backlogs, and also the writing of the product backlogs, and also rank the user stories among the priority basis. In the contribution, what I've done in the sprint 1 is I selected and working on the user stories, and also I also wrote about the sprint 1 backlogs, and what should be done, what is the condition of the satisfaction of the user stories, what is the most important task in our hand. And also the most important task in the sprint 1 was like the collection of the data. So I also sort talked with the supervisor and the clients, and also with my team members, and then worked on the collecting of the data that is required for our project. Like, so there are so many datas, and some of them the datas were on, they were not relevant. So we had to, so I had to like check the data according to the relevant. And when I found the data that was relevant for, that was the data that like Tasman Sea, then we collected the datas and we started to manage the datas, and then worked on the sprints. And after the data collection, then other I did other in like sprint backlogs and then documentation, and also helped my friends in like some of the codings and testings. And after the sprints, what I've learned from the sprint one is the importance of teamwork. Because if this project was a single handed, then it will be very difficult for one person, and also it will take a bit longer time. And so what I've learned from sprint one is the importance of the teamwork. And then the planning and like if we're not planning how we will do the tasks, then it will have been very difficult. And also the coding is in Python, although I knew like few of the codings, I did not know a lot. So in by this sprint one, it helped me to learn and use the coding on my own basis. And also the documentation, importance of the documentation part, and in the sprint one. Similarly, after the completion of the sprint 1, we moved on the sprint 2. And in the sprint 2 also, like the sprint 1, we divided the user stories according to for the sprint 2. And then we started writing the sprint 2 backlogs. And then after the and we rank the user stories among the priority basis. And after the sprint 2 backlogs, then the tasks were divided, and the tasks were divided among our friends. And then I also learned about the Django web framework for the for codings and for the backends development, and the importance of the SQLite for database management. For the SQLite is one of the easier one for the database management. And the importance of testing, and the testing for the unit testings and model testings and other system testing for the what we after the codings, the testing was important. So I also worked on the testing aspects of the project. And after the after the sprint 2, what I've learned in the sprint 2 was that in the importance of similar like the sprint 1, the importance of the team coordination and the management. And also the WSGI like web framework, like the design web framework. And then the coding, like the importance of codings in this project. And after the completion of the sprint 2, we moved on to the sprint 3. And the similarly in the sprint 2, I wrote about the sprint 2 backlogs, is the importance are like the remaining backlogs, and then divided the user stories in according to the tasks. And then also tasks and estimates, and also divided it among our friends. And then use of SQLite cipher for the encryption of the database, as the client requires, as the client has mentioned that he needs a secure database, so that the database is not compromised, and it cannot be hacked by other peoples. So I learned about this importance of SQLite cipher for the secure database. And also I also contributed in the use case diagram, and also drawing of the diagrams. And then after the drawings of the diagrams, so I moved on to the testing parts. And then the testing parts, like testing of the logins details, testing of the testing whether like anybody, other people on intruders can hack the systems or not. Testing of like what happens when the other when the users log in, and what happens when the admins logins. And I worked on those parts as well. And what I've learned in the sprint tree is like the importance of one of them is SQLite cipher. SQLite cipher was a bit new to me, and then I learned about this SQLite cipher, and how it helps in making the database secure one. And also the some of the web framework, some of the design web framework. And although I knew some of the how to draw some of the diagrams, I knew some of the how to draw some of diagrams, I did not know a bit more about the diagrams. So in this sprint, I learned a bit more about drawing of the use case diagrams, and the sequential diagrams, and the activity diagrams. And after the sprint, after the project was almost completed, I learned about the is the importance of the sprints as well, how the sprint has to be divided, how this methods helps us in making our project a bit easier. And simple, some of the main tasks were divided in the sprint 1 sprint, some of other tasks were in for the sprint 2, and some of the remaining tasks in the sprint 3. This has helped us in allocating the times, and also making our team overall easier to do this project. And overall contribution in this project is uh, working with the teams, although we have worked with I've worked with the teams, but I haven't worked how I have worked in this project. I haven't worked like that, so I learned how to work with the teams, and also the importance of the planning and discussions. Our experience, we were not planning and we were not discussing with our supervisor, we were not discussing with ourselves, or we were not discussing with the clients, we would not have the our project would not have been successful. And also the documentation parts, and the even I contributed in the documentation part. And then also, the as I have already mentioned, I also contributed in the testing parts. And then after the testing part, I helped my friends in the work in the backends and the front end developments. And then I also helped in drawing I also draw the diagrams of the use case diagrams and some of the activity diagrams. I did not know much about these diagrams, although I have few knowledge only. But from this project, I started learning about the diagrams, and also contributed in making of the diagrams. And then overall in this project, I learned about the importance of the team planning and dividing of the projects in the sprints, and the use of SQLite cipher, and then design of a framework, the testings, and the importance of documentation. These are the lessons that I have learned in this project, and I think that these lessons will be helpful for me in the coming in time. And thank you for your patience, and thank you for your time.